backgrounds. Is it better to lower your expectations as a matter of course? Because, of course, this is something that's been in the news. What's your thoughts?
Well, my first response is absolutely not. It is not better to lower aspiration at any point at all. I've got a personal mantra. I have lots of mantras.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was telling my sons, who have, one is in sixth form, one's just doing their GCSEs, to aim high. And essentially you aim higher than high. You go for the very top, because at least if you don't succeed to hit that pinnacle, you will get what is deserving of you. So if you have to fall back, you're going to hit something you feel that you have merited and warranted. So you reach for the stars, and you might get the clouds, but that's good enough. So you do not have lower aspirations. I also feel quite strongly about adults having aspirations for young people, because if we don't have them for them, who's going to show them where they can get to and what they can actually aspire to? Who's going to do that?
Who indeed? Who indeed? It was a big thing on the news this week. I'm sure some of the ladies have heard that, and it was a little shocking, really. So it was wonderful to have you on, and we're looking at your life. So therefore, that's a great person to ask, because you had to aspire. Things are not going to just fall in your lap. Maybe it did, but you'll no doubt let us know. Tell us a little bit about your life. Where'd you hail from?
So, as you mentioned, my book, which I'm now in the midst of getting to publishing, will be published on the 25th of June, is called From Hood. Thank you. Mm-hmm. It's called From Hood to Headship for a reason. Mm-hmm. I have to say, everybody seems to have gotten the title straight away. I come from the hood, and I mean the hood. I'm from Northwest London, and anybody that comes from the places like Harlesden, Stonebridge, Willesden, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And I'm proud of that heritage. I'm proud that I'm able to say I have hailed from the concrete jungle, and now I've been able to work my way out. And you're right about aspiration, because often when I speak to the students, I say to them, I didn't just wake up and sit in the head teacher's chair. Mm-hmm. I had to work my way to get here.
Work, I am sure.
Absolutely. So I come from Northwest London, very, very humble beginnings. I don't want to say too much that's in the book, but I say to myself, if it were around when I was a child, I would have been a child eligible for the pupil premium. Let's put it that way. The pupil premium is a funding that the government gives to those who are from disadvantaged backgrounds. Predominantly, there may be single-parent families, or they're receiving a certain income threshold that is below what would be deemed to be acceptable or, accessible to many things that the privileged have access to. I was definitely one of those children. I remember thinking about how I would redecorate the house if we had lots of money, that sort of thing. I was on an estate. I lived on 2 estates, and as I mentioned earlier, and one of them was Stonebridge, which the stone bridge, after which it is named, no longer exists. But that is just such a symbol, and it is actually on the cover of my book, because it is a replica of what I always remember about living in that time and living in that area.
Wow. So you lived on the Stonebridge estate, right? So, all of us, Northwest London, West London, we know it very well. So you had to then go to your senior school. So what was senior school like for you?
So I'll tell you a little interesting story about senior school, which isn't in my book, which was whilst I lived in Brent, and my older brother and my older sister had gone to Brent School, a well-known Brent school, we moved from Stonebridge to Church Road, and I was fortunate because it was a church school. So it was a Church of England school, and that meant that it was a feeder school for a different cohort of secondaries. And I said to my dad, I'm not going to the same school they went to. That school's rubbish. I had high aspirations at the age of 10. I told my dad where I was going to go to secondary school, and I'm very strong-willed like that. My dad and I are probably exactly the same. He didn't argue, and he said, okay, and I went to school in Westminster, which was also a church school. I absolutely loved secondary school. I loved it to the hill, and it was a true school of inclusion. There are about 30 of us, and I kid you not, that are still in contact today because we had such a positive experience at school. But it was also really, really multiracial, and that's because it was on the cusp of central London. So you had people who were sort of ambassadors of certain children mixing and mingling with those of us that came from sort of Labatt Grove, Church Road, you know, a mixture, absolutely upschool. And we were really, really fortunate that we happened to have some teachers in the school who understood us, even though they didn't come from the same backgrounds as us. And I think that is absolutely critical, because I do say that being of Black heritage, your champions and your allies don't have to look like you, but they have to share an empathy and an understanding about who you are and where you come from, so they can guide you on your journey for where you're going. You know, we live in a world with human beings, but I loved school. Not everybody was like that, obviously. There were some teachers who didn't quite get us. You just avoided those ones or did what you had to do. I wasn't an angel at school, I'll be honest with you. But I wasn't a tyrant either.
But you weren't a tyrant. I love it. I love it. Were you a tyrant, Pat?
Sorry?
Were you a tyrant in school?
No, I was really quiet. I'd have been mortified to have got into trouble. Seriously. I would have been mortified. I remember getting a detention for talking once and I cried. So no. And we also had the threat that if we didn't behave, we would be sent back to Jamaica. So that was...
Oh, wow. What a threat.
No one wanted to go and live with their grandmother, did they?
I love it. I love it. So did your school persuade you or encourage your aspirations for university?
No. And I'll say that we were in the London Education Authority. There was a lot of money in my school at the time, lots of funding. And I think the word aspiration wasn't bandied about enough at the time then. It was all about getting us through school, just getting us successfully through school. All right. So that's a really interesting thing. And it was, but what they did do, which I think is just as important, was enjoy, you know, this term of cultural capital. I always argue, well, whose culture? And they enriched us all by sharing our culture. And I remember sitting in a class that was called Integrated Studies with one of our teachers, and my friend used to play steel pan. And she'd written an essay in her book, and she had written down that at the weekends, she plays the steel pan. That was it, or so we thought. 2 weeks later, her steel pan teacher was hired to deliver steel pan lessons in our school. And that was because her teacher, our teacher, Mr. Gilbertson, I don't know where he is right now, had read our books, read the essays, told the head teacher, this is what this student does, and she took it upon herself to do some research and found it. We were gobsmacked. And for me, that's just as important, actually, as pushing the educational, because you're recognising the children and what makes them tick, what motivates them, what helps them to aspire. But I am lucky that my background and my family heritage, you know, there was no way I was going to stop school at 16. It just wasn't happening. So in that respect, that's where aspiration came from. I think sometimes who you're with, who you're surrounded with, can instill some inspiration just by virtue of being friends or family with others. But I wouldn't say it came from school at all.
I hear you. My school, I recall, they persuaded everyone to go and work in Beecham's.
Mine was Woolworths.
Yours was Woolworths. Yeah, ours was
Saturday,
Beecham's.
and they just said that as we're not scientists, that we should, as we're not into science, we should, if we have Saturday jobs, we should remain in them because we might become supervisors.
Yeah, well, here we were all told that we could go and be secretaries at Beecham's. So it was amazing that I said I would like to go to college. You know, go to college. Right. So they all became secretaries at Beecham's. Nothing wrong with that, and I'm sure lots of them have progressed from there. But it's just looking at the aspiration, you know, and I think that is so very, very important. What was school like for you, Rochdale, in your school?
I wasn't encouraged to go work in Beecham's. I was actually encouraged to stay in sixth form. But I guess I was quite fortunate because I played musical instruments, so I was encouraged to play all the musical instruments that I could play and to sing the choir. I played in the band, the orchestra, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I was encouraged to do those things.
But in terms of going forward, when you left sixth form, what did they expect you to do?
go on to further education.
Oh, wow. Catholic school.
Yes, I went to a Catholic high school. We had careers teacher who the inspiration was we had to go on to further education. But it was more about your ability, but you were encouraged to go to further education. It didn't stop there at all.
Fantastic. That's very, very good. What about you, Lyra?
Well, it appears that I'm the only one on the panel today who didn't have an education in the UK. So I went to school in Trinidad, my primary school, my secondary school, my college. We were encouraged to achieve as much as we could. But that's what education is still like out there. So everybody is encouraged to do the best that they can. Lots of testing to make sure you achieve the targets and so on. So we didn't need so much the allyship that Miriam has mentioned that is required here in the UK. And as you know, I've got a background in research, so I'm sorry, I'm going to bring up some statistics here.
Yeah, go for it.
I was reading in preparation for that. But I was shocked to hear that only 29% of boys from a Black Caribbean background had gained a grade 5 or higher in both English and maths at GCSE. And, you know, the figures for Black and mixed ethnicity categories weren't much higher than that. And that really shocked me. I mean, if this is the level we're achieving, or our young people are achieving, what's being done about that? How are they being encouraged? Where's the allyship to tell them that you can do better than this? You know, to say this is not your future. This is not where, you know, this is not the level at which we're going to pitch. We're going to pitch higher because, like Miriam said, if you pitch higher, then if you achieve less than higher, you still achieve high.
Yeah. It's, what can I even say? I'm going to tell a story. My son told me this week, he's now 25 and he was in private education. He told me this week that when he went to sit his English GCSE, so he's in the class to sit it, that the teacher brought him a foundation English paper, which I believe is, I would say, the equivalent of a CSE for those of you who are in your 50s. And he said that they brought that to him and he looked at it and said, but this is a foundation paper. And the teacher said, yes. So he says, I refuse to do it. This is the day of his exam in the exam room. And he says, I refuse to do it. Bring me the GCSE paper. And the woman was shocked. And she sort of looked at him and he says, I'm not doing it. And he just sat there and he said, bring me GCSE paper. And she said she had to find one. She brought him the GCSE paper. And he got an A.
That's terrible.
Right? And I didn't know. I didn't know. And he says that they brought him that, and then I think he got an A for that and got a B for literature for the other one, literature. Can't even say the word. But let's say that she brought him a foundation paper.
See, that's teacher bias.
Bearing in mind that he's 25. You know, I'm older than that, obviously, but at school, when I went to sixth form, it was a similar thing. When I chose my A-levels, I remember choosing English literature and law, and I wanted to do a third subject, and the teacher told me, well, there's a lot of reading involved. and I would be unable to study it. And I remember saying, well, I can't read. And they say, well, there's a lot of reading and a lot of research and you know, it might impact your ability to focus on English literature, which is what you're passionate about. And in the end, I just dug my heels in. And I remember asking my mum if she would write a letter, and she said, look, I don't know what to say. You write the letter and I'll sign it. So I wrote the letter, she signed it, and I was able to do 3 A-levels. But you really do, if you don't have somebody to push you, or you haven't got the wherewithal to push yourself, it is very difficult out there. And I mean, your son's 25 and I'm 105.
I just found it astonishing. I found out this week that happened, and I sat there with my mouth wide open. And I thought, I can't believe it. We're paying for this.
Oh,
and
yes,
maybe,
right.
Yeah, we're paying. And maybe it's because we were paying why they found a paper. Well, because maybe if he was in a standard school, state school, maybe they wouldn't have found a paper. I just don't even know. But I did actually put my hands on my head. Couldn't believe that took place.
Well, this is what I was saying about the unconscious bias of teachers, you see, at different times throughout lives of our young people, and where they have low expectations of our young people and what they can achieve, with that impacting on the young person's belief in themselves as to what they can achieve.
Laiwa, you took the words right out of my mouth. So I was waiting and biding my time to say, what you're all describing is exactly that, and it's called low expectations. But if you notice, Rochdale and I both went to church schools. And what do church schools have? They have a certain group of values. So even though they may not necessarily have shared expectations, something subliminally happens in that culture and the ethos of the school that allows certain children to thrive. And it's very interesting because, as I say, I decided not to go to certain school. And I could see that there were some benefits, even though, there would have been some staff that didn't deem us able to reach the higher echelons where we should do. It's quite critical, and this is why I'm ahead of a comprehensive school. And it's on purpose that I've chosen to work in the school that I'm working in. Because I think every child needs a champion. Every child needs somebody that's going to do what somebody else in another context won't. And there aren't enough of me. There aren't enough people that are going to eradicate mediocrity and low expectations in the classroom so that there is challenge. I mean, when I walk around my school, I do challenge where I see low expectations. I've had conversations, even just recently, we had a conversation as a group. And a member of staff was saying, well, our children, they don't really want to go to Oxford. They're more entitled to do the BTEC and the kind of manual qualification. I said, who said that? Who said that? Or are we just perpetuating, this is the way it's always been and this is what we'll continue to do? Let's do something different. Let's say our children are going to aspire to Oxford and we're going to show them how. And they're going to try and get to Cambridge, and we're going to show them how. And I just want to share something else with you. An ex-student who is currently is at Warwick University was thanking me. I saw him last summer, and he was saying the reason why he thanked me, we did this experiment where we gave the children an opportunity to be interviewed as if they were going to university. And I challenged him. I said, that was rubbish. Go home and come back and impress me. And he thanked me so much because he said, when he's been at university for 2 years, he went there with a few friends who were also very, very able, but came from the same background, that have dropped off along the way. Why? Because they didn't have the ability to stand against their peers who were more privileged and used to the environment they were in. They hadn't been challenged enough to think that they will be different, but they need to stand up, hold their head up, and know they're just as capable as those that have had tuition or had other types of education given to them. It's really important.
It is.
Go on, Roch. What were you saying?
I was actually going to make a comment about the fact that I think it was earlier this year, there was a program on educational subnormal, and it was all about Black kids, right? And it hasn't stopped. There's still this expectation that Black children are educationally subnormal.
And you know what shocked me is that in my son's school, which, as I said, was private, very small, I couldn't fault them. They were great to him, but he never got that from the head. The head was really, I think that he is where he is now because of the head. The head pushed and pushed and pushed and totally always told him that he should aspire, that he was brilliant, always did that. And I even saw it, always did that. But he got it from the form tutor. I just found it astonishing.
That's why form tutors are very important.
I'm sure they are.
I know. I always say to my form that, I have high standards of them and high expectations. But that's how I started, and I still do. But you do need a teacher to encourage you and back you, because not everybody's going to get that from their parents. And I'm very grateful to, and I will say her name, Mrs. Gatehouse. I meet her in the half-term holidays, and I become a teenager again when I see her. And she was my lifeline, and my law lecturer, Dr. Slapper. I know, an unfortunate name, but
very unfortunate.
Unfortunate name, but they were both my backbone. I don't know where I would have been without them. So
I hear you. And you know, while we're talking, if you, our listeners, if you have any questions at all for any of our panel or for Miriam, please do text in your questions on 07832 412 522. Waiting for your text. I'll say it out again, 07832 412 522. Please do text away and we'll ask the questions. Well, Miriam, how did you then come into teaching and go into being a head teacher?
As a young child, I used to dabble around with languages, and so that's how I got into learning language. I'm a modern languages teacher, and I hadn't always planned to become a teacher. And I remember feeling really disillusioned at the end of university, thinking, gosh, what am I going to do? I wanted to become a journalist.
Yeah, so my son, yeah.
I had this vision of myself on the news and flying around to different countries and relaying what was going on. And I'd actually applied for both the London School of Journalism and South Bank University, which is where I went to. And I got into both. And then I decided, well, if I do journalism, that's all I'll probably end up being qualified doing. So let me broaden my horizons, do another kind of degree. And at the end of that, we were all kind of, it was an anticlimax. We sat there in a careers talk and the woman was talking to us about what we could do, and we thought, we don't want to do any of those professions she talk about. They sound really boring. And I'd done a couple of jobs. You know, when you're studying, you kind of do part-time things here and there. And I remember once going to do some tuition and once going to a playgroup with little children. I thought, fancy that. I want to be able to keep up my languages. What can I do? So I thought, I need to be able to do that. I need to get paid. I need to enjoy it, quite like young people. And I went and spoke to the careers advisor. She said, why don't you try teaching? I thought, I'll give it a go. I absolutely loved it. That was it. I fell in love with the job. I walked to a primary school and I found that hideous. And that was because you had to get some experience in a school. I went to primary school, I thought, oh my God, they're all grappling, calling you mum by mistake and all those things. They're so small, they haven't quite developed yet. And it did make me hesitant. And I visited a secondary school and absolutely loved it. That was it. I fell in love with the profession. And I just thought, let's see how this goes. And not wanting to gloat, but after a while, I realised I'm damn good at this. Subject that not many people like me can teach or do teach, and I'm getting through to these people and I'm making a difference. And that was it. I was sold. I went into teaching. I didn't look back.
What languages?
Working in the West End at the top, and I had to give that up. And I just thought, that's it. I'm done.
Miriam, what languages did you teach?
I teach French and Spanish. Notice I say teach because as the head I still feel that I'm a teacher as much as I beg for a class every year. Let me be in the classroom, please. So I have one small class in year 7 French and I absolutely adore them and nobody disturbs me. It's my sanctuary. That's it, me and those children.
You love, bless it. So when did you decide a head teacher? Was it quite soon after going into teaching, or how does that work?
No, I think what I would say is I'm not a ladder climber. I will work dutifully and I just want to do a good job. And becoming a head, again, you will hear the journey in my book, but that seed was not even sown by myself, it was sown by others. Saying things to me like, you could be a head, I used to laugh it off, but you're ridiculous. That's far too much esteemed. That's far esteemed in terms of, hierarchy. I don't want to be up there telling people what to do. And you have this vision of what it means to be a head. And I think it was an organic process, going through my career, moving from one position to leading in another. And I would say it was a natural step. that I needed to make when it came to a point where I couldn't do any more as a deputy head. And I got frustrated, actually. I got frustrated that I wanted to make more of a difference and I needed to do it in my own way. And somebody said to me, you know, you want to be a head when you're working with a head and you think, I could do that differently. And it isn't disrespectful, it's just a different approach. And that's where I got to, and I thought, I'm ready now.
Wow, okay, I hear you.
So can I just ask you, you know the journey from deputy head to headship?
Yeah.
What is that process? Don't worry, Miriam,
Okay.
I don't want to become a head, yeah?
That's fine. And if you did, I would help you to become a head.
I know you
I think that's why I'm there. So listen carefully, Pat. I would say the key difference between being a head and a deputy is this. The deputy is the doer, but doesn't hold the accountability. So if they make a mistake or if things go wrong, they can just go, head teacher, and point the finger. And that is where the key difference is. It's a mental area of holding so much weight. The other thing is, as a deputy, you only hold maybe a third of the knowledge of what's going on in the school. As the head, you have to know and be aware of absolutely everything and some, the outside agencies. And you are accountable. The 1,200 children in my school, as far as I'm concerned, I am responsible for. It is down to me. It is down to me how they leave my school and become responsible citizens. As a deputy, you don't really feel that difference. You know you're working towards that goal, but you don't feel that responsibility to get them there. And it's a mental shift more than anything, because you can do the job. You know, you can type documents, you can hold court with many parents, you can advise, you can train teachers, you can offer professional development, you can do all the job. But it's about the accountability and being responsible. And the other thing is you're answerable to a board of governors who are external agencies that question and grill you and make sure you're doing what you need to do. And there is this invisible weight you have on your shoulders every single day whilst holding the mantle of hope as you navigate the school, because you know that not just the students but the staff need you to be a stable body, a stable figure, because it gives them stability and empowers them and feels that they can do their jobs too. And you have to be in a position every day to encourage, to motivate, to inspire, but also to be an ear to hear when there are issues and have really broad shoulders. And I am still developing what's called my Teflon skin, because sometimes things get to you. Sometimes they do.
Hi, just a further question, really. So we already talked about how some students could be underestimated of what they are capable of achieving academically. There's another side to that coin where some of our young people might be disciplined and controlled more frequently just because of the color of their skin. And you know, that's how they're treated in the classroom. Obviously not in your classrooms, but it could well be happening for other young people in other schools. And I wondered what advice you would have for either the young people or their parents as to how to deal with it if they feel this is a problem.
First of all, I'll say, Lawa, it's extremely complex. And sometimes, sadly, our own people don't make the situation easy to deal with. And actually, that's at the heart of my book in 2 chapters, because I feel really passionate that those that look like me, look at me, should be doing well, and I should be doing right by them. And I talk about that in the book because it's something I feel very strongly about. But it happens, and you say maybe not in our classrooms, maybe not personally in mine and Pat's, but it probably does happen in my school. I'm not going to say it doesn't. And my advice to parents would be work with the school, open up, be open, be honest and open, and have regular communication. Because what that does, actually, it breaks down the barriers. Often parents are in school or they're only called for negative situations. And they feel that they're only called for negative situations, but ultimately schools will contact them. They have limited resources, limited time when things are going wrong. The assumption is that things are going okay. They don't need to make a phone call parents in. They have set times for that. But the more you can open yourself up to communication and say, look, this is the standards I have for my children. This is what I expect of you. This is where I want things to go. The better you will find that perceptions, and you mentioned the unconscious bias, very complex to get rid of, but those perceptions are slowly broken down. being at every parental engagement is critical. They do decide, it demonstrates that you are there for your child. It really does demonstrate that, and you are going to be the champion for that child. Being on the governing body, or even being a member of the PTFA. Every parent I've had a challenging conversation with, I end the meeting by saying, would you like to be on my PTFA? I'd really value your voice because you can really tell me what's going on in my school. And flip it. It's not negative, it's to help us to improve and meet the needs of our children. So that's what I would say. I think it's critical.
What does PTFA stand for?
It's the Parent, Teachers and Friends Association.
Friends.
So you have your government. Yeah, the F is for friends, apparently.
Okay.
Some call it PTA, but some call it PTA. Yeah.
Okay. That was actually going to be one of my questions about the challenges facing Black children. And what do you see and identify as the challenges facing Black children?
Right now?
Right now. Mm-hmm.
Where do I start? Well, I'll start with the unconscious. Yeah, there are, because it is so complex. I mean, some are self-induced, so peer pressure. By virtue of where they are, the system and the society has been set up for some communities to be on a downward spiral, and that is difficult. And then in the school, you have some who perhaps don't have an appreciation, or as I mentioned, an empathy for some of the sectors of our society, and don't try to get to know the children, and are just full of assumptions. And those assumptions lead to actions that create a difference between the children and the adults that they're dealing with. And I think that what you end up having is more of conflict in some situations, rather than collaboration, and rather than bringing the children on board. And it's really difficult to undo that. If you are in a classroom and you're with those children and that happens and it continues, very difficult to win them back, and it just perpetuates itself all the time. I think our children also do need to, there's a phrase, isn't there? You can be what you can see. Some people believe it, some people don't. I believe it. You can be what you can see. You can say to yourself, I want to be a radio engineer. I know somebody that does that. It does make a difference. Let's not fool ourselves and think that it doesn't. If we're looking at the curriculum, I teach modern languages. When I started teaching modern languages, there wasn't a black face in a book. Now, it's beautifully diverse, and they recognize the diaspora, and they recognize that French is spoken all over the world. And I used to have to teach that from grassroots and find resources myself. I know that I can pick up a languages book and there will be some reference to, I don't know, Ivory Coast or Mauritius or wherever it might be. But if it's not in the curriculum, bring it into the curriculum. Let the children understand that, there are communities where there are histories that you need to learn and understand as well. Somehow navigate and weave it in. That's another challenge facing our children. They go through the education system without things that light a spark and a fire in them. It's down to us to do that.
And there is freedom within the curriculum to bring certain things in. It just probably depends on the culture of the school, isn't it? If the school would encourage that.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that, because Pat's shaking her head saying no. We have the national curriculum. Well, we are actually an academy, so if you're an academy, you do not have to stick to that strictly the national curriculum in the same way. But most academies do, because it's a framework within which you teach. But I would argue there is some flexibility. If you are teaching about, we have this Black History Month that people do, don't they, all the time, and same old names come up, Martin Luther King, etc., etc. Why can't you think outside the box and talk about how the Notting Hill Carnival started and actually the origins of that and what that means to the people today? Why can't you do that? You do have flexibility, you just have to find the openings. It is limited, and you do have a time pressure that you can infuse it into your curriculum. And it's about training and development. There is an organisation, I think they're called the Black Curriculum, and their mission is to get schools to embed in their curriculum elements of diversity. So it isn't foreign, it should be normal. There should be a day that we come to that we don't even have to refer to the Black Curriculum. It is just the curriculum.
It's just that. I mean, we have to look at the sort of, I would say, the elephant in the room, which is the child Q situation. I mean, that just goes on with regard to looking at black children and things that happen with black children. How does a situation like that take place? And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because, of course, it included children. So I'm not going for that school and looking at that situation, but I am saying, how does a situation like that arise?
I think there's only one word for that, and it is racism.
Right.
It is perceptions, because you just do not operate like that with children, full stop. So that is the pinnacle, the crux of it. However, I would say there were some systemic failures in the school's management system which led to that situation arising. I have personally been in a very similar situation a few times, as in being a member of staff who has had to search a child because they have got, let's just say, illicit substances on their person.
I hear you.
You know, it's happened several times. There are ways of managing that, good grief, without escalating and getting to the police being on site. I think there was a failure by the senior leadership team to train and engage people that were dealing with that matter. I think there was a failure by the safeguarding lead, who I understand, I mean, this is anecdotal, but had instructed a member of staff, because the safeguarding lead themselves was not on site, that it was okay for them to be searched by the police. But certainly the head teacher, I mean, I have personally told a police officer, back off, you are not touching this child until I have their parents standing next to me.
You've done that
and
already?
I have done that, and I was threatened with being arrested. And I said, you're not arrested. What are you going to say to arrest me? How's that going to look? I'm the head teacher protecting a child. What are you going to do? Let's be real here. And I remember feeling quite passionate. It was a vulnerable mixed race girl who had had an altercation on the street, and the police wanted to come in and arrest her. And you have what you have are Safer Schools officers, and they are trained to deal with children in schools. And this is where another failure occurred. Clearly, these officers were not trained to deal with children in schools. So all of this, as far as I'm concerned, came down to the leadership of the school at that time. Okay. And it was a chink in their armour that led to child Q. That is absolutely horrendous. Totally horrendous. Being disgraced and traumatised for life.
Yeah,
as a result of what happened to her, completely and utterly shamed. I mean, you know, there's going to be a lot of work to be done to undo the mental damage and scarring that this child is going to have suffered from. Never mind the trauma that then extends to her peers. Don't forget that. So they walk around in fear and anxiety about the police already. I just want to share a little anecdote with you. When, in terms of the police, when the tragedy that happened, which was George Floyd, took place, I wrote a poem called I Cried. And the reason I wrote that is because I did cry that night. I cried because I had to come home, and whilst my white counterparts wouldn't have to do that, I have 2 teenage boys at home, and I had to have a conversation with them, and it hurt me to my core. I'm feeling quite emotional thinking about it now. And my son said to me, oh, we got stopped by the police. I said, I beg your pardon. I didn't know about it. It was a few months back. They were on their bikes and they got stopped by the police. Nothing untoward happened, but a fear rose up in my chest, because I thought I never knew that had happened to them. And I thought I had to write and speak about this, as did many other black parents out there. So you can only imagine what that means for the parents of child Q and all of those links. And as a black community in the United Kingdom, we only need to watch something on the news and the trauma is felt by all of us.
All of us. 100%. Yeah, we all feel it. Yeah.
It goes right through the black community.
So true.
And it will never change. It will never change, much less your own children when it's close to home. So this issue with child Q, it boils down to racism, because there are communities there that would never have to even contend with a police officer daring to think about searching a child in that way. Why would you do that with that child? Why? And my understanding is it was a very able student as well. When you work in a school as long as I do, children who are highly capable don't always behave in the ways you expect. In fact, those A-grade students can be quite loud, quite eloquent, quite noisy. You know, it's fun to see them be different in their manifestations of who they're becoming. Doesn't mean they're bad children or they're naughty. We're all different. Let's enjoy and celebrate those differences. I understand she was a very high achieving student.
She was.
Which tells us that she was a child that knew what she needed in life and, was quite focused. She might have had a bit of, attitude or whatever. Yeah. Who didn't? I certainly did when I was a teenager, let me tell you.
I hear it. I was told by one of my son's primary school teachers, after they kept to me hounding this child, they said, we're not trying to break his spirit. That was the expression they used. We're not trying to break his spirit, because exactly as you said, he was that full and chatty, and he was just that. We're not trying to break his spirit. I thought, oh, aren't you? Yeah.
Well, all I would say to that is, what would the slave master say? Let's break their spirit. Are we back in those days? And why are we even using that language?
Yeah.
Unconscious bias. Here we go again.
Here we go again. And I knew it as soon as they said that. I knew that's where we're going. That's where we're going. Oh,
and that's why language matters to me. You said it in the bio. It really matters to me. How we speak is really, really empowering. It can bring down, but it can really make a child rise.
I hear you. What made you write the book? What made you write your story?
Again, I think when people said to me, you could be ahead, when I finally got there, a few friends and family said, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. That was the first reason. The second reason was, secretly, I'd always wanted to write a book. Always. When I was a child, I tried to write a fiction book. I used to be really good at writing stories. When you're a child, you get congratulated and awards and stickers and so on. You think, oh, I'm quite good at this. But I never thought I had the discipline to do it. I'm also very active. I've always got lots of things on the go. My husband said I've got ADHD, so I'm diagnosed ADHD. I'm always doing something. And I suppose it was a life mission for me. It was a project. And I felt that I had a story to tell because of what people told me. So when I say to people, I'm a head teacher, I don't know what it is. I try and keep myself humble about it. But people's eyebrows are raised when I say I'm a head teacher. And then they raise them again when I say I'm a head teacher of not a primary but a secondary school in London, and they raise their eyebrows again. And I thought, okay, so there is something there, and actually if I do this, it's not about me, it's about encouraging somebody else. That for me is the reason I've written the book. Because I want someone to read my book and say, okay, I need to be a champion for whoever it is that I need to be in society. I can do this. I can get over imposter syndrome. I can work hard. I already do that anyway. And I can also reach wherever it is I'm trying to get to. And this person had barriers, and this is how they did that, and I will too. She's ordinary, she's normal, she comes from this background, she's happened to share it, and I've shared it so that maybe somebody else can use it. It certainly isn't about self-glorification. It isn't certainly about being boastful at all, at all. And I'm hoping that the tone of the book demonstrates that. And at the back I do make a call to action about, if you are a leader, if you are black or a person of colour, and if you are in education, don't shy away from being a leader, please. We need you. We need you. So Pat, we need you.
I'd rather be a player than a coach. Sometimes, in some environments, there can be too many coaches. I'd rather be the player. But just a question, Miriam. From one person who suffers from imposter syndrome to another, how do you overcome it? Or you never do?
Well, that's a really good question. If you never do, I think, I don't know if you never do. Perhaps anxiety and imposter syndrome go hand in hand, and there are people. I watched a TED talk the other day, and the gentleman said he'd suffered years and years of depression, and he talked about the key. I love TED talks. In fact, that's my next mission. I want to be a TED talker.
Go for it.
Go for it,
please. I love
that's
TED.
really scary.
I love TED talks. My inspiration is Ken Robinson. I
absolutely.
I listen to him all the time. When I'm cleaning the house, I've heard it off. I know it off by heart, but I still listen to him. He's amazing.
He really is.
Gone too soon.
Really is.
Yeah.
So this gentleman was talking about his depression and how many years he'd suffered it, and he always thought, would it ever go away? And his answer to that, and I think it's the same for imposter syndrome, is about our basic needs, surrounding ourselves with other people who are humane, who you can draw strength from. Now, we're on a Christian radio station, right? We would argue you have to have faith. Don't we? And if you have faith and you hold on to that, you use your prayer as your weapon, and you say, right, I'm going into battle, Lord help me, and you go in there and you say, you've put me here, you won't leave me nor forsake me, let me deliver what I have to do, and you get on with it. Some people have other strategies. I also call on my higher power. I do that. I do it every day. I do it every time I'm going to a challenging meeting with a parent. I had one on Friday, and believe it or not, I was gobsmacked. The parent I thought was going to be really difficult sat there in absolute silence. So I don't think you do ever get over it, but I think what you do is you find tools and strategies. I have a friend that's Dr. Michelle McDowell. She does tapping. She teaches individuals how to do tapping. Don't know if you've heard of this.
Oh, yes, they do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you do that for anxiety, and that chatter monkey in your head that says, you're not good at this, you're not meant to do that, you just bat it away, back off. And then you don't listen to it, you say no, you find your strategies, and you do it anyway. Have you heard of Susan L. Jeffers? Feel the fear and do it anyway?
Yes.
That's what you do.
Yes. Yes, that's what I say to myself. You know, sometimes you just have to step out in fear and do it anyway. When I feel the anxiety and that imposter syndrome, I have to say thank God for the the toilets near the sixth form room for the staff. That's my little prayer room.
Can you see this book here? Can you see this book?
I'm not Wonder Woman, but God made
me wonderful. Oh wow.
Oh, Sheila Walsh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you see how battered and tattered it is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's called me reading and going back and reading again, yeah? Post-it notes, yeah?
Miriam, can I just ask you a question? You said earlier that you're a mother, you've got two boys. I always wonder how, it's just me to look after. How do you manage motherhood and teaching? Seriously, how do you do that? I get amazed at some of how do you get your marking done? How do you get your preparation? I know you're not doing that now, but how do you get your preparation done? But you're obviously doing other things. How do you balance all of that?
Okay, so again, I talk about that in the book. Oh. There's a chapter called Babies where I talk about the culture shock or the body shock I had when I had my babies. Okay. But what you might not know, Pat, is I'm not just a mother to two, I'm a stepmom to four.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
So my husband, shall I say his name? Some people may know who he is. Mr. Theodore Manderson, Premier Gospel Radio DJ, presenter.
Oh, okay.
He decided that he was going to do naughty things when he was younger and ended up with 4 beautiful children. And so I'm stepmom to them as well.
They're all 6.
So they don't all live with us, that's the first thing, but we have had them around lots. And I would say God is my strength. I'm telling you now, because I don't know how I do it. I do have difficult days, but I have an amazing husband who is my best friend and my champion and has supported me to be enabled to do what I do as a leader. Because never mind being a head, being an assistant head was hard. I thought it was hard then. I thought it was hard as the head of department. I don't know how. I think I love what I do. I say to the children, whatever you do, guys, love what you do. Enjoy it, because then you'll wake up in the morning and be driven. If you don't, you're going to want to get out. If in doubt, do get out. But, and I think that's what it is. I do things that I enjoy or find ways of doing that. In terms of time, Pat, I don't always get it right. I don't. I've had my tearful days. I've had my days where I've just thought, I am not coping. I've had days, but as I said earlier on, it's a bit like what you said about imposter syndrome. Who's your best friend? Who's the one that you can go to and just blurt it all out to and get it off your chest? Who can you do that with? And if you are a person of faith, draw on that heavily. Use your community, go to church, cry, battle it out, but don't implode. Which I did, and I won't give too much away, but that chapter, I hope that you do read the book, because that chapter is a turning point in my life. Turning point in my life about where I thought, all of the things that I heard about imposter syndrome and how I feel to being a people pleaser, that was a turning point in my life. And actually, what they say is, what do? You give busy people things to do because they'll just fit it into their schedules.
So true.
That is so true.
Yes.
That is so true. Where can we get the book?
So I'm launching the book on Saturday, 25th of June at Willesden Library. And at that launch, you can get tickets on Eventbrite. There are 2 types of tickets. If you buy a VIP one, I will already have ready for you a VIP signed one with a goodie bag. Or you can come for free as long as you register, and you can sit and listen to me again, and there will be some entertainment. There'll be a few light refreshments, and you can purchase the book on the day. Following that, it will be available both on my website, which I'm setting up, I'm going to launch on that day too, and on Amazon. It's already on Amazon, so it's there. It'll be there as Kindle, and it'll be there as a hard, paperback copy to buy, so you can purchase it there.
Brilliant. And we'll be able to. Sorry, you said on Amazon. And also on, what else did you say?
My website.
Your website.
My website. Yeah.
You'll give us the name in time. We'll put it up on our
the website. It will be miriammanderson.com. That's the website. Nice and easy.
Nice and easy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nice and easy. Yeah.
Before, because we're going to be wrapping up soon, Miriam, and it's just been so great. I have to say, it's been absolutely brilliant. And also, just a reminder, please do send us the invite and the flyer.
Yes, of course.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Yes, just got a reminder.
Definitely.
Program director has been very, very useful tonight. Right. So, can you please just say to me, right? We've got a text message. So I just want to ask you this question, as they've said. What advice would you give parents in encouraging their children? What advice would you give to parents?
And encouraging their children to do what, sorry?
Encouraging their children to aspire, that they can achieve.
I think it's exactly those last 3 words, that they can. Very often children think they can't. Often they think that they are going to fail, and I think the fear of failure is really hard. And there is 4 words that I think need to be said to children more regularly. It's gonna be okay. Because the fear of doing GCSEs and failing, trying something out and failing, stops them, holds them back. And sometimes they manifest it in poor behaviours, because what they want is a sense of achievement and belonging somewhere else. There's a sentence I say, this is really funny, but black people, we as a people of colour, we excel at everything. We put our hands to it, we excel. So much so, we excel at crime and we excel at poor behaviours. Right? You can just flip that energy by saying, trust me, if you study hard or you put your mind to a craft, you can do it and it will be okay. It will be okay. The world is not against our children. They need to recognise that we are a global majority. When I take my children to Ghana, they're not worrying about somebody touching their hair or asking them questions about the colour of their skin. It becomes a non-entity. They come back to the UK and things are different. They have to be more outwardly looking. So I would say, tell your children they can. They absolutely can. To find their own enjoyment and passion of what they enjoy, their USP, and to build on that. They can do whatever they want to do. The world is changing.
What is USP?
Your USP is your unique selling point. What is it about you that you can bring? I just want to leave you one last message. I celebrated a special birthday 2 weeks ago. I had a girl make my cake. She is of Caribbean heritage, and her cake is amazing. And unfortunately, sadly for her, she goes to a school in Brent. The very first day of secondary school, her mum told me, when I picked up the cake, mum said to me, she got into the cake business out of adversity. What happened? First day of secondary school, she got knocked down. It was a hit and run. Broke her back, was absolutely in devastating areas. Yeah, but what does she do now? She makes amazing cakes. It's called Kiki's. Absolutely superb. She still is being educated, but she's had this horrendous injury. And this is what I mean. Tell your children you can. And if you see the hope and the enthusiasm a mother has for her daughter, it is beautiful. And she supports her with her business. Out of adversity, that's what's happened. If you don't even have an adverse challenge, what's stopping you? Go for it.
What an answer. That's an absolutely wonderful answer. You know, I have to just say that just listening to you, it has been so totally wonderful, because you've given us aspiration. And I think that just to encourage our children to aspire, you know, particularly the things that we are hearing, because I think that this year has been a very difficult year for our young people. Been a very, very difficult year. The things that we've heard all about our, you know, particularly our you know, children of colour, it has been a very, very difficult year for them. And so to hear your story, yes, your story, it's not a unique story. I'm sure it's not a unique story, but it's a story of encouragement. And that surely has got to be what we need to give out. It's been a story of encouragement, and for our youngsters to know that as you did, they can too.
Yeah.
It has to be that. Has to be that. Pat, you know, you're also a teacher.
Hello.
Hello. Also a teacher. How would you encourage our young people?
Oh, I always encourage the people that I teach, in that I've always said that I never wanted to be the teacher that I had when I was at school, the ones that dissuaded me from being a journalist, like what Miriam wanted to be. And I've always said, if they said, "Miss, can I be this?" I said, "Of course you can." "Miss, do you think this will be hard for me?" "No, it won't, but you've got to try. You've got to work hard." And language matters. There's no way I'm going to say to a student, "You can never be that," or "Don't do that because it's too difficult for you." I would never say that. I always say that you can be it, and there's always a but. You have to work hard. And and I always say this: if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You've got to plan, you've got to try, and you've got to be determined to succeed. Tenacious spirit, that's what you need. And I always say that to my students.
It's totally wonderful. And I think for those who are listening, Pat, it's just important to tell people, those who are listening, teacher, and what were you before?
I was a criminal and matrimonial lawyer.
There you go. And that didn't come just by guess. That came by hard work.
Because I was working and studying at the same time, and I worked like a dog, you know, unsociable hours, you know, at the police station at 2:00 in the morning, because crime doesn't start until the early hours of the morning. and then in court for 10 o'clock, you know. It was tough. You had tough opponents.
And the reason why, I think it's important to say, actually, the reason why I start and I give the introduction, the reason why I give the introduction as to the professions of the ladies who are on the panel is to encourage, because I want people who are listening, our listeners, to know that people have worked and have achieved, and they've achieved different things. They do different things, but they are people who have studied and tried, and, you know, whether it be that they fell into the jobs that they've got, because that happens sometimes. It certainly happened to me, you know, but you can achieve. You can achieve. You just have to give it a go. Try. And as you said, it's okay. Go for it. Give it a go. And I thank you so much, Miriam, for just helping us on our little journey here, and, you know, for just telling people how your story was. Thank you so much for being with us.
I've really enjoyed today.
Oh, thank you so
very much.
And our lovely panelists, as always, thank you so much for just partaking and for giving us your own opinions and for just being part of today. It's been totally wonderful. And so for our lovely listeners who've been with us today, thank you for joining in. Really, thank you for everything that you do in just being with us and supporting us. And as always, as we're going to end now, stay blessed, stay safe, and stay lifted. Bye for now. Thank you again, Miriam, for being with us. Bless you.
Thank you.